Alex, I spent most of my life convinced that multi-material meant hitting a piece of maple with a hammer until it finally agreed to fit inside a walnut frame. But lately, I've been watching this little plastic spitting robot in the corner of my shop do things that would make a master joiner's head spin.
I saw that look you were giving the printer this morning. It was somewhere between genuine wonder and I'm about to go get the wood glue and show this thing who's boss. But seriously, Tiger, people think multi-material 3D printing is just about making a toy dinosaur with green scales and yellow eyes.
Oh, it's a whole different animal once you get under the hood. It's like the difference between painting a fence one color and realizing you can actually weave different types of thread together to make a garment. When you start talking about mixing TPU, that's the bendy rubber stuff, with something rigid like PLA or PETG, you're not just making a model anymore, you're making a tool with a built-in shock absorber. No screws, no epoxy, just two plastics shaking hands at 200 degrees Celsius.
It sounds amazing in theory, but I've seen your graveyard of failed prints. It's not exactly a handshake every time. Sometimes it looks more like a messy divorce on the build plate.
My scrap bin is a very expensive museum of overambition. The biggest wall you run into is chemistry. You can't just expect any two plastics to fall in love. It's like trying to weld aluminum to a piece of oak. For example, PETG and PLA, they'll sit next to each other at lunch, but they aren't going home together. If you try to print them as one solid part, they'll literally peel apart like a cheap sticker the second they cool down.
So, if the goal is a functional part, say a hard plastic handle with a soft, grippy overmold, and the materials won't bond, are we just out of luck? Or is there a Tiger's special workaround?
Well, that's where you have to get sneaky with the design. Think of it like a dovetail joint in woodworking. If the glue isn't going to hold, the geometry has to. I've started designing mechanical interlocks. I'll model little internal channels or T-shaped bones inside the rigid part and then have the soft material flow into those voids. It's a physical trap. They don't have to like each other if they can't get away from each other.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a physical bond rather than a chemical one. But what about the hardware? Most people listening probably have a single nozzle printer. Do they need to go out and drop $2,000 on a tool changer or a fancy multi-material unit just to put a logo on a coaster?
Don't let the manufacturers hear me, but no. You can actually pull off some pretty slick multi-material tricks with the machine you already have, provided you're willing to be a little hands-on.
Oh boy, here comes the part where Tiger tells us how to trick the machine into thinking it's a factory in Switzerland.
It's not that crazy. Look, there's this command called M600. It's basically a pause and swap instruction. In your slicer, you can tell the printer, hey, when you reach the top of this logo, stop everything, move the head to the corner and beep at me. Then you walk over, pull out the black filament, shove in the gold, and hit resume.
Wait, I've tried that. The problem is that the first bit of the new color always looks like a muddy mess because the old color is still lingering in the nozzle. It's like trying to wash a paintbrush. The first stroke is always a weird blend.
Exactly. You end up with vomit green when you wanted emerald. The secret, and this is something I learned after ruining a 12-hour print, is the wipe tower. Even if you're doing it manually, you can set up a sacrificial block of plastic on the corner of the bed. The printer goes there first to clear its throat before it starts the actual work on your model. It guarantees that by the time it touches your masterpiece, the color is pure.
Let's pivot to the why. Beyond just looking cool, why is this actually changing how we build things? I was reading about cellular metamaterials in a research paper, which sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie. But how does that land in a regular shop?
It's about variable density. Imagine you're making a prosthetic or even just a custom handle for a heavy-duty chisel. We've always been stuck with the properties of the wood or metal we choose. But with multi-material printing, I can design an object that is rock solid on the outside to take a beating, but has a honeycomb of soft, energy-absorbing material on the inside. We're basically playing God with the physical properties of the object. We're deciding exactly where it bends and where it stands firm.
So it's not just two colors, it's two different personalities. But I imagine the personality clashes get worse when you move into high-performance stuff. What happens when you try to mix nylon with something like carbon fiber?
Now you're talking about the Ferrari problems. Nylon is a nightmare. It's like a sponge for humidity. If you're printing a multi-material part and one of your spools has been sitting out, while the other is bone dry, the internal stresses will warp that part into a Pringle before it's even halfway done. You have to treat your materials like fine cigars. Keep them in a humidor, or in this case, a dry box.
This feels like it's becoming more of a chemistry project than a craft project. Does the software keep up with this? I mean, how do you even tell the printer that this specific internal lattice needs to be flexible TPU without losing your mind in CAD?
It's getting better, but it's still a bit like teaching a bear to ride a bicycle. You usually have to export separate STL files that all share the same origin point. You bring them into the slicer, and they snap together like a 3D jigsaw puzzle. The real magic and the real headache is the purge volume settings.
Purge volume? Is that the amount of plastic you're basically throwing in the trash to get the colors clean?
It's the tuition you pay to the gods of 3D printing. If you're going from a dark black to a translucent white, you have to purge a massive amount of filament. If you don't, your white will look like a dirty gray. I've seen prints where the poop pile, the wasted plastic, was actually heavier than the part being printed. It hurts my frugal heart, Alex. It really does.
I've seen your poop bin. It's a very colorful monument to inefficiency. But isn't there a way to purge into the model? I've heard about using the infill as a trash can.
That is a pro move right there. You tell the slicer to use the internal, hidden parts of the object to clear the nozzle. It saves plastic and actually makes the part denser. The only catch is if you're printing something with thin walls, that dark transition plastic might show through like a bruise under the skin of your white outer layer.
Okay, let's talk about the holy grail of multi-material printing, dissolvable supports. This is the one that actually makes me jealous of the high-end setups.
Oh man. Being able to print a complex moving engine part in one go, then just dropping it into a bucket of water and watching the supports melt away. That's the closest thing to real magic I've ever seen in a shop. No more digging at plastic with needle nose pliers or scarring the surface of your model.
But those materials, like PVA, are notoriously finicky. I've heard they turn into a sticky jam if you even look at them wrong.
PVA is the diva of filaments. If your nozzle is a few degrees too hot, it chars and clogs your hot end so badly you might as well throw the whole thing in the woods. It requires a very delicate touch. But when it works, when you pull a perfectly smooth, complex overhang out of a water bath, it makes all the swearing worth it.
So, if someone is listening to this in their garage, looking at their basic Ender 3 or Prusa, and they want to start leveling up to multi-material today, what's the first step? Don't tell them to go buy a 5-nozzle tool changer.
Start by mixing textures, not just colors. Try a manual swap print. Design a simple phone case or a coaster where the base is one material and the accent is another. Get a feel for how those materials behave at the interface. Do they stick? Do they pop apart when you flex them?
And maybe don't start with the 10-color dragon that takes 3 days.
Definitely not the dragon. Start with a useful failure. My first multi-material success was a simple knob for a table saw. It had a bright orange core so I could see it easily, and a black, rubbery TPU grip so it didn't slip when my hands were dusty. It wasn't pretty, it had some zits on the surface, but it worked. And it gave me that little spark of, what else can I combine?
It seems like the recurring theme here is that the technology is only half the battle. The other half is just having the patience to understand the personality of the plastic.
That's it exactly. In woodworking, we talk about grain direction. In metalworking, we talk about temper. In 3D printing, especially multi-material, we're talking about thermal compatibility and interfacial bonding. It sounds fancy, but it's just the same old craft, learning the limits of your materials until you know exactly how far you can push them before they push back.
Well, I'm inspired. I might go home and try to print something that isn't just a solid gray block of sadness.
Just remember, if the purge tower is taller than the house, you might want to rethink your settings.
Fair point. Any final wisdom for people staring at a tangled mess of filament?
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail, but try to fail in new ways every time. If you're going to mess up a print, make sure it's a spectacular mess that teaches you something. And for heaven's sake, keep your PVA in a vacuum bag.
So, tomorrow, we try the clear into infill method.
Tomorrow, we try to make a hammer handle that doesn't shatter on the first swing, one layer at a time.